I'm Judy Lloyd. I am the president and CEO of the Danville Area Chamber of Commerce, which is a job that thank you very much for my cheering section in the back. And we're very proud to be here today to kick off one of the programs in our Youth Mental Health Initiative. We kicked off this initiative last November with a dinner called Breaking the Silence to try to break the stigma against youth mental health. And we promised that we would do some educational programming that would help to educate parents and students in our community on resources that are available. So our first program today is a program of the Danville Area Chamber of Commerce Fund, which is our outreach that we do, our educational outreach, like what you are seeing today. And we also have a youth mental health outreach initiative, which is a grants funding initiative to give money to programs, nonprofits in our community that are in the youth mental health space, because we feel very strongly as a business community, we want to support that. So if you are so inclined, I do have some pages over there which you may take a look at, which have how to donate. Would love to have your help, your support, and I am always reach-outable. I'm the easiest person to find in Danville other than the mayor, I think. So if we could kick off today, I first want to introduce John Campopiano, who's here with us from the school district. John, welcome.
Thanks everyone. My name is John Campopiano. I'm the Executive Director of Secondary Education. I just wanted to welcome all of you for being here. This is incredibly important. We also have a member who is incredible. You'll hear in a little bit, Miss Rooney in the back, and she'll be presenting around 6:40 in that area. Briefly, I met April when I was a newish assistant principal in another school district, and I have 3 boys that are 19, 18, and 14, and I've been talking about one pill can kill since then, and that's been about 10 years. And so there's nothing more important to me in our district than mental health of our students. If you get all the education in the world, but you cannot manage it in the world, we haven't succeeded. So we're so pleased with this partnership. We have some incredible people in this room that are helping us. This is what makes this community special. Not everyone does this. So thank you, great turnout, and it's going to be a very valuable night. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. Now, if I could, I'm going to do just a quick commercial about our Youth Mental Health Initiative, and then I'm going to introduce some of our elected officials who are here. So we decided to do this program, the Fentanyl Crisis, How to Save a Life. We started to think about this program several months ago, and I didn't even realize that we were going to hit Fentanyl Awareness Day last week, which gave us a great opportunity to reach out and to talk to some of our legislators who are also sponsoring legislation in this space. So I'm just really, really happy that we've had the opportunity to do that. So you'll hear later on from April Rivero with National Coalition Against Prescription Drug Abuse. She'll do your fentanyl training. But right now, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our initiative and then introduce some of our elected officials who are here. So our Youth Mental Health Outreach Initiative is in partnership with Three Valleys Community Foundation. This is a brand new foundation. How long, Kelly, have we been in business? A little over a year?
Yeah, we're about a year and a half.
About a year now. This is Kelly Bauer. She's the CEO of Three Valleys Community Foundation. And the Three Valleys run from our neighborhoods of, Alamo, Danville, San Ramon, all the way down through Livermore. However, all of the funding that we raise for the Youth Mental Health Outreach Initiatives comes right back here to the San Ramon Valley. Danville, San Ramon, unincorporated Danville, Tassajara, all the areas that you know in your school district. And that was something really important to us when we set up the fund. When we set up the fund, it was back in November, and it was for the purpose of actually doing our kickoff gala, which many of you were at, and I really appreciated the support that we saw from our community for that. We recognized 4 organizations. The first was Discovery Counseling, and I know Sumita is here. There's Sumita, who you'll hear from later. We recognized National Coalition Against Prescription Drug Abuse. We recognized Evolved Treatment Centers, which is a new program in Danville, only about maybe a year and a half old. And we recognize CPC Counseling Centers, which is based in San Ramon. So that's how we got started. So I ripped a couple things out of the headlines today. This editorial was at the beginning of May. California must get ahead of the daily fentanyl epidemic. There's other such stories, a lot of these from the East Bay Times. Los Gatos student directs fentanyl high documentary. There's several bills you'll see on the left-hand side that are before the state legislature, and some of them have stalled. And so we're kind of taking a look at those bills. We haven't taken a position as a business community on any of them, but it's something that's certainly on the minds of everybody in California. And then last but not least, our own San Ramon Valley Fentanyl Workshop to assess local risk and resources, which is what you're participating in today. And I do want to tell you, this program is being recorded because we think it's really important for parents to have an opportunity who couldn't be with us today. So I want to do a special thank you to our partners, and then I'm going to introduce a couple of our elected officials who are here with us. National Coalition Against Prescription Drug Abuse. Of course, our own school district, which is your host today. You're in their building, and we have Rachel Hurd, the president of the school board, with us. San Ramon Council of PTAs, the Contra Costa Meds Coalition, San Ramon Valley Fire. I know we have Chief Paige Meyer here. There he is. Chief Meyer's with us. Contra Costa County, we have Candace Anderson with us. Thank you, Candace. Danville Police, we have our Chief, Alan Shields. There's Alan in the back. Thank you, Alan. San Ramon PD came on board as well. We were very, very happy to have them as a partner, as well as the San Ramon Chamber. And I hope all of you had a chance to get some of the Jersey Mike's beautiful subs that are out there. They have been a wonderful partner in this initiative for us. And I also have with us Mayor Robert Storr, who I'm going to turn it over to in a minute. But first, I do see back there Councilmember Dave Fong from Danville. Thank you, Dave, for being here as well. I don't think I've missed anybody else. I hear some of the fire district folks may show up a little later, so that's awesome.
Vice Mayor Mark Armstrong.
Oh, Vice Mayor. Where is Vice Mayor? Right next to you. There's Vice Mayor Mark Armstrong, who you will also hear from. So if I could, Mayor, please kick us off here.
Thank you. First of all, I want to begin by thanking Judy Lloyd and the Danville Area Chamber of Commerce and her Board of Directors for recognizing the importance of and addressing such an important issue in our lives today in each of our communities. I appreciate all the partners that are here today, especially our school district, our law enforcement, fire protection agency, and all the boots that are on the ground addressing fentanyl misuse. And from counselors to our electeds, we need to get this done as soon as possible. And this is the beginning of how we find solutions. Education for our young will always be important, and tackling this epidemic at home will help us get closer to solving this problem. Unfortunately, drug overdoses touch the affluent communities and our most vulnerable communities literally in the same way. Families lose children. We lose our friends, we lose our loved ones, and none of us can imagine what it would be like to lose any of our children for any reason, but especially for a drug misuse and overdose. Honestly, I didn't even know what fentanyl was until very, very recently, what type of drug it was, what it was actually used for. But here's what I do know firsthand. You know, we need to continue educating ourselves each and every day so we become smarter and we can educate our children and their friends as well. And those families that are touched by fentanyl overdoses are never the same. And I know, we all know families going through very, very difficult times. Newell Underrich and I have a friend, close friend, that lost his son in early 2021, March of 2021, and still to this day cannot talk about it without being overcome by emotions. And that's if he could talk about it at all. And as parents, we always blame ourselves. That's what we do. And that's what he's done for over 2 years. And it's debilitating, and we're just never able to honestly move on and recover from it, and it affects our family at the core. I'm proud today of the efforts to find solutions in each of our communities, and we need to continue these discussions. Danville's Town Council is fully committed in a meaningful way to help in any way we can to help solve this problem. We constantly need to help our kids understand how serious this really is, through education, counseling, and a great deal more discussion on mental health issues and naturally drug abuse. I'm proud of each of you who have committed the time and the resources to help solving this problem, because it is an epidemic, and we're all here for all the same reasons. We're all rowing in the same direction, and I couldn't be more proud of the people in this room today that will help us find the solutions that we need to help our kids get into adulthood. Thank you for all that you guys do. I am supposed to introduce my very good friend, San Ramon Mayor, or Vice Mayor, Mark Armstrong, who is just as committed as we are in Danville to solving this problem, and each of our communities share a common goal, and that is to always ensure the health and the safety of our kids. Mark, thank you for doing this, buddy.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Judy and the Chamber, for hosting this event. I'm really pleased to be able to participate in tonight's program. It's such an important topic. You know, there continues to be a growing risk of opioid death, especially among our young people, whether that's an overdose from fentanyl or heroin or prescription opioid medications. On March 14th, I was honored to present a proclamation to April Rivero from NCAPDA for Prescription Drug Abuse Month, Awareness Month. April and some of the youth ambassadors from our local high schools reminded us about those struggling with addictions and the loss of productivity from opioid addiction, the impact on families, and the effect on our criminal justice system. Fentanyl is so prevalent, and we need to have Narcan available and provide training to our staffs in an effort to curb a rise in opioid overdose deaths among our youth. And not just our police officers and our school resource officers, but on school campuses and with our educators too. The national and state level numbers are staggering, but these opioids are here locally as well, and we can't deny that. In San Ramon alone, there have been 3 overdose fatalities within the past year and a half, since January 2022. And even 1 fatality is too many for our community. All of our San Ramon Police Department personnel carry Narcan in their police vehicles because it works, and they've done so for several years. Since January 2022, San Ramon Police Department personnel have saved 3 lives through the direct administration of Narcan to someone who had overdosed. So what can leaders do and policymakers? Well, we can promote Narcan training and its use. We can continue to promote awareness like events like this tonight. You know, the California Department of Public Health also recommends having regular conversations with teens, young people, and loved ones about the dangers of fentanyl and the risks of mixing drugs and the life-saving power of Narcan to reduce the stigma around seeking help, treatment, and care. This training and awareness event today is worth it, even if we just save 1 life. At this time, I'd like to introduce Rachel Hurd. She's the San Ramon Valley Unified School District Board Chair. Rachel.
Good evening. Thank you everyone for being here. I just have a few remarks from the school district. At the start of this school year, our district staff realized that the time had come to propose an initiative to bring Narcan to all of our schools. At that time, Narcan was only available through our school resource officers. And we wanted to proactively ensure that we could save any student that was possibly overdosing. In October, staff brought a proposal to the Board of Education, which we approved unanimously, to have the district enroll in the naloxone distribution project, which is sponsored by the California Department of Health Services. The district immediately applied, and we were approved in November. It happened that quick. Through this program, there are now 2 to 4 doses available at every one of our campuses. So everyone at the school campuses, as well as our service center and this building as well. Staff volunteers were trained in how to administer it at every site, and I have to thank our district nurse coordinator, Kathy Rooney, who you'll hear from in a little bit, for doing all of that training, and we are so appreciative of her leadership. She did the application, and she did all of the training. So thank you, Kathy, and I look forward to hearing what else you have to tell about us. And at this time, I'll introduce Contra Costa County Supervisor for District 2, Candace Anderson.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. Month of May, especially the end of the month of May, is kind of a hard time for some of the members of my family. 5 years ago, on May 25th, 2018, my daughter-in-law lost her sister, one of my own daughter's very best friends, to a heroin overdose. She had been battling mental illness. She had been battling a drug addiction. Her parents were doing everything they possibly could to assist her through this. She had been a student at San Ramon Valley High School, talented artist, talented musician, beautiful young woman. Now, I don't know that Narcan could have saved her. In this instance, when she went to sleep, one night she had texted her mom, a beautiful, loving text saying, "I'm going to bed early. Indy, my dog, and I are going to go on a hike early in the morning." Next morning, when her father went in to check on her, she was gone. She had died of an overdose. So no one had been there, no one had seen that she was ODing, but nevertheless, I know Narcan does save lives. In Contra Costa County, and much like other counties in the state of California, we are the safety net. We are there to help the most vulnerable in our community and provide a lot of resources through our health department. And so within our county health department, there's a lot we are already doing to get Narcan out into the community. Physicians at our Contra Costa Regional Medical Center, which is the county hospital and county health clinics, anytime they are now prescribing opioids to a patient, they are also giving them a dose of Narcan. Because as we all know, opioids are very addictive, and if someone does not take their medication properly, they can overdose at that time. We are giving out Narcan through our homeless services, and we have street outreach teams, our core teams. They have Narcan. They are also distributing them, training people in our encampments how to use the Narcan. We train multiple school districts, guide them on how to obtain free Narcan through the state. We hand out Narcan in something called a Choosing Change program. It's a medication assisted treatment program that serves over 900 patients who are on Medi-Cal and who have an opioid use disorder. We have our ambulance personnel, much like San Ramon Valley Fire, hand out Narcan not only when they're treating someone, but also if someone has suffered from an incident where it appears that opioids were causing a near overdose or another problem. And then we also contract out with a variety of nonprofits and other for-profit groups to help us deal with addiction services. And so one of our harm reduction services does just hand it out at all of their dispensing sites where they're helping people who are dealing with substance use disorders. And we're right now looking at what's the possibility of having a free vending machine where someone could just access Narcan. We also have an alcohol and other drugs commission and an individual who oversees that program. If any of you are interested, I do right now have an opening on the county's Alcohol and Other Drugs Commission, and I'm actively recruiting anyone. Please contact my office if you would be interested. It's a monthly meeting commission. It talks about substance abuse, use in our country, in our county, alcohol use in our county, all of these things that are such important topics for us. And so encourage you to get even more involved than you are. I'm delighted to be here tonight. I've been a big fan of April for many, many years, and the work she has done in light of her own personal family tragedy to help other families not go through what her family had to go through. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of the solution to the crisis we are currently facing, not only in our county, but throughout California, throughout the country. Thank you.
And so, as a way of introducing myself, I'm the founder and the executive director of the coalition that you've been hearing about, the National Coalition Against Prescription Drug Abuse. And so our mission, as you can see, is really just to prevent prescription drug-related substance use disorder and fatal overdoses, primarily through our community education programs, but we also do policy change work, legislative advocacy, and harm reduction activities that includes the distribution of Narcan and now fentanyl test strips. If you look over at the dais or the table over there, you'll see that we have Narcan ready to distribute. So anyone who wants a Narcan overdose rescue kit at the end of our session tonight, You will be considered trained because of my presentation, and you're welcome to stop by and pick up a kit, and we hope everyone does. So anyway, as you can see, our community partners are extensive. We work with everybody we can possibly engage in this conversation. I just want to say a huge thanks to all of our dignitaries here today, to Judy in particular for taking on this issue and doing such a great job in bringing us all together here today. It means a lot to me because I've been working on this situation or this issue, let's just say, since 2010. We are a part of a California overdose prevention network. This problem has become so big that there is a network, and so all of the green counties that you see on this map, those represent counties that have a coalition similar to ours. In 2012, I also, in addition to running the NCAPDA for short, I established the Contra Costa County Meds Coalition. And so until about September of last year, I was leading that, so that was about 10 years of effort. But let's see, Mariella, you're here. We finally got some funding from our county, which we really, really appreciate. And so Mariella Sandy has taken over leadership of that coalition. But basically, they do the same thing we do, but it is on a localized basis, just here in the county. I continue to work really strongly here in the San Ramon Valley because I live here and I want to make a difference right here. But Mariella is working really hard in other parts of Contra Costa County to make a difference. So anyway, a lot of you know my story, but for those who don't, you're looking at photos of my son Joey, who was going into the 3rd grade when my husband and I moved us up here from Southern California. So Joey went through primary school. He went into Iron Horse Middle School on to Cal High, and he graduated in 2006 and goes off to college. Joey was a senior at Arizona State University, about ready to graduate, when we got that unthinkable call, letting us know that he had been found in his off-campus apartment after being out with his friends and taking the prescription meds that he had been prescribed 9 days before, that he unfortunately mixed with alcohol. So it took us about 4.5 months to get the toxicology report back, the coroner's report, the whole works. And we learned that he died from a single pill of Xanax mixed with a pill and a half of oxycodone, and then his alcohol level was just over what it would have been legal for him to drive with. We were completely shocked. One less pill, one less drink, and I think he would have been fine. He was uneducated. We were uneducated. I didn't know anything about these medications that are so commonly prescribed, and the fact that just a couple of pills can do you in, it just was absolutely stunning. So anyway, it's in Joey's memory that I'm here tonight, and I'm basically out there every day pretty much talking to somebody about this issue. And unfortunately, it's not just the prescription drugs, and that's been my mantra, for the last 10 years or so. We've had to include fentanyl in the discussion because that has become the biggest taker of lives. And you'll see as I go through my presentation how they link up. There is a link. So on a national level, we have an overdosed America. That's absolutely true. You can look at the stats here. We're losing almost 300 people a day to an overdose in our country. And the majority of them are from synthetic opioids, which is, in effect, fentanyl. So that's really the equivalent of an airline going down every single day. That would make the newspapers, right? We hear about those airline crashes. But we don't hear about this problem unless you're tuned in and you're paying attention to the headlines, not thinking, hey, it's not going to be me, my family, as was the case when this happened to our family. You can just ignore it and, move on with life. But I can tell you that there is no parent I know that's lost a child who wasn't shocked in the end that it happened to them. It's not something you expect to happen. And so we all need to be on alert for this. As far as the local impact, and I will tell you that there's an issue. We really rely on data. We need it really to determine where we're going to apply our resources that are not unlimited, as you can imagine. So this is the data that we get from a program that allows us to look by zip code at what's going on in any community. So you can see that we show these numbers of overdoses. Now, not all overdoses are fatalities, thank God, right? Naloxone makes a huge difference. Narcan is the spray version of that, same thing. And so you can see in this slide that we had a lot of naloxone being administered. I just looked last night. These numbers are, just from last night. And 106 people could have lost their lives to an overdose if it wasn't for emergency folks coming to the rescue, getting people to the hospital or whatever. This isn't the whole story, because this is just those EMS responses and the data that we can, access from a program that is available now to us. But earlier, we heard from our vice mayor in San Ramon that there have actually been 3 fatalities. So the data is always moving, and we're always trying to find the best source of data. And so I'll be talking to the San Ramon PD folks, and I want to see where they're getting their data, because we're one off. We show 2 since January 21, and yet they showed 3. So the bottom line is we have a big problem, and that's what this is meant to show us. The community impact goes beyond the deaths that we're seeing too. Any of us at any given time can be, victims of crime. It's typically cars broken into, sometimes houses broken into. We're also seeing pharmacies being robbed, and people walk in and they're just demanding all the opioids they can get typically. It's not about money, they want the pills. So anyway, we've got that going on. We've got a lot of people suffering from substance use disorder in our community here. You don't hear about it. It's not going to make headlines, but people are suffering in that regard. The stigma that surrounds substance use disorder keeps people from asking for help. So only about 25% of the people that have an issue in their family get help that they need. So we've got to change that too. The stigma needs to be broken down. Substance use disorder is a chronic illness. It isn't a moral failing. These people aren't bad people. It is something that's hijacked their brains. These chemicals do their number on them, and they end up with a problem. Nobody asks for this. It's something that develops on a short time or a long time basis. And then, of course, drug driving. I don't know how many of you have been involved in an accident. I haven't recently, but so often they're caused by people that are under the influence. And being impaired with, certainly fentanyl, but even prescription drugs can have its impact. There's a common misconception when it comes to prescription drugs that because doctors prescribe them or a medical professional prescribes them, they're safer. They're not as harmful as those drugs that you might get out on the street, like heroin and fentanyl and whatever else. But as you can see, they can be just as deadly, addictive, and illegal. And the substances that we're going to be talking about, the prescription drugs, are catalysts to people going out and getting fentanyls, we call them. So there's a connection between the prescription drugs that are commonly abused and the prescription drugs that young people as well as adults are trying to find. And they're easy to find, as you'll see. These are prescription drugs that we're going to be talking about. So they include the opioids, so painkillers, sedatives, and prescription stimulants. So when it comes to sedatives and benzodiazepines, these are commonly prescribed. In classrooms, when I'm in a 9th grade health class and ask the kids, how many of you have heard of Xanax? I will tell you that almost every hand is raised. They know what these drugs are. And that one is commonly abused. The reason I have it highlighted is because kids look for it. They find them in medicine cabinets because parents don't always lock them up if they've been prescribed these medications. And these are the drugs that the cartels that are making these fentanyls are throwing out there. They're not going to throw stuff out there that nobody wants. They're going to throw the drugs out there and make them available to people that reflect what is being sought. So anyway, these drugs can be dangerous just as real prescription drugs. They can cause overdose and certainly cause dependency and all that. But when you have a fentanyl that looks like a Xanax pill and you cannot tell the difference, then you're really in trouble. Stimulants like Adderall and Ritalin, these kinds of medications would be normally prescribed to people who have ADHD or ADD. That's the typical reason they're prescribed. Well, Adderall is commonly abused among our high school students or college students. Adults also, I can tell you. So once again, the drug cartels are making the fentanyls look like Adderall. That's another common medication out there that there's nothing about it that's going to be Adderall. It's going to be either a dud, meaning that it has just binding material that will help them make the pill look like Adderall, or these other drugs that it's not going to have Adderall, or it's not going to have the medication in it. It's potentially going to have enough fentanyl in it to kill you. So anyway, moving over here, just a little aside, is cough medicine, cold medicine. You need to know that that's abused by our kids too. I don't hear about it so much in our valley here. I'm sure it happens. Some communities it's more prevalent than others. But cough medicine, the stuff that's over the counter, has alcohol in it, and so you can get high on alcohol. If you drink enough of it. It takes a lot, but they do that. They just mix soda with it, dilute it, drink a bunch. They throw candy in it to make it taste better, because let's face it, cough medicine tastes pretty awful. And then the cough medicine that would be prescribed to, it's going to have codeine in it, and codeine is an opioid. So the opioids, I think, are really, you have to consider them the most dangerous. And, so for parents especially, it's not uncommon for kids that are playing sports, and a lot of our kids are playing sports, for them to be injured. They go to the doctor and they may be prescribed opioids. Well, kids can recover from their illnesses and their ailments really quickly. They're very resilient. Sometimes they don't need this medication. It's such a high dosage. Advil or over-the-counter medication can work just fine, but they're still given maybe a low dosage. But I can tell you, I've met up with a lot of kids over time that have developed an opioid use disorder, a severe one, that started out with a sports injury. Or perhaps it was the wisdom teeth that they had removed and they got prescribed for. So we need to avoid taking these if you can. And that would be for us too, adults. But especially for kids, they're that much more susceptible because of their developing brains to having these drugs hijack their brains. So minimize, avoid if you can. And then moving over now to the fentanyl. You're looking at the penny there and those little specks there of fentanyl. That is enough to kill you. 2 milligrams is all it can take to kill you. So if you have that much in a fake pill or more, you can be a goner with one single pill. It's showing up in heroin too. So you've got the pills, the fake pills, that look just like the real thing, just as I've mentioned. But you also have fentanyl powder form showing up in all these different street drugs like heroin, like cocaine, like methamphetamine. There's really no street drug out there that's safe anymore. Just assume that it has fentanyl in it and stay away from the stuff. We need to teach our kids that, because there's really, again, even with some of these street drugs, I would say especially cocaine, there's a low perception of harm for that too. So we need to make sure they know that if they get a hold of any of this stuff, it's a game changer. Fentanyl is a game changer now. Nothing is safe at all. So moving over from then, we don't have enough trouble with fentanyl. Xylazine is now making its way into the drug supply too. Xylazine is a central nervous system depressant like painkillers and also sedatives would be. It does not respond to naloxone, though. It's not an opioid. And so that means that, if it happens to be mixed up in those pills or any of the other drug supply, you can't reverse the overdose. You have to hope that if there's some opioid in there and you can extract enough out of their system with a naloxone so they could still be saved, but there's no guarantee at all. So anyway, this is really, really scary, and we're hearing more and more about this. We just talked to DEA last week. In fact, they said that it's definitely in our area. We have fentanyl test strips, as I mentioned, and I do have an example. We do have them over there, so if anybody wants to grab, 1, 2, whatever, just go ahead and do that. They basically look like this. So you would basically hold a little blue end. You just, there's a little process. You put the drug you want to test in a little cap or whatever, add water to it, and then you put the little stick in there for just 15 seconds with the ones we have at least. And within 15 seconds, it'll either, have a line on it or not, letting you know that fentanyl is present. It won't tell you how much fentanyl is in there, in terms of amount. It'll just tell you that it's detected fentanyl in the supply, which would hopefully repel people from using it. So anyway, we really kind of hesitate giving these strips to kids because I don't trust that they're going to remember that unless they test the entire drug supply. It may not be an accurate test. It may show that it's okay, and it really isn't. So I had a recent opportunity. Somebody brought a pill to my house that they wanted me to, actually I thought I was going to be giving out test strips, and they showed up at my house and they said, hey, can you test this for me here at your house? And I'm thinking, well, okay, I know how to do it, suppose so. So anyway, I tested the pill. 15 seconds later, that line showed up. It was a Fentanyl. And I will tell you that I would never have guessed it was. It was made to look like an M30, so this is basically a Percocet 30, one of the most prominent ones of the Fentanyls out there. And she took the pill home, and I don't know what kind of conversation she had with her husband after that, because it was his pill that he got from, she said, quote unquote, a trusted drug dealer. That was what he said. There's no such thing. All right, so this is where the overdose rescue training comes in real quickly. So naloxone, as you've been hearing about, can save lives. If the overdose is related to opioids, it only works on opioids, but it can literally turn an overdose around if you can get to that person quickly enough. So anyway, it comes in different forms, but the type we have over in our kits is going to be Narcan. It's a spray version, very, very easy to use, and you'll see how to use it here. The first thing you have to do, of course, is determine whether you think it's an overdose or not. Typically, these are the major signs, and breathing, heartbeat slow or stop completely, that's going to be a sign. With opioids, it just shuts down your breathing. That's what the overdose ends up happening from. But any of those can be signs. You're going to call 911, of course, call them first, get help there. And then in terms of administering the Narcan, this is what the cartridge, this is the packaging, so that you're going to have 2 of these in the kits. So you just peel back, the packaging, super easy to do. And you're just going to hold it, push it up into the nostril gently, you don't want to hurt them, and then push the pen forward. So the naloxone is going to come up at the tip and go up into their opioid brain receptors and hopefully shove aside the opioids that are there that are causing the breathing to stop. So if they're not breathing at all, you need to give them either chest compressions if you've been trained to do that, or rescue breathing. Most of you probably know how to do that, but the signs are here. Bounce back over to the second Narcan cartridge if you need to administer a second dose after 2 to 4 minutes if they haven't started breathing. Fentanyl-related overdoses can happen really quickly. It can be minutes instead of maybe, up to even an hour or so. And because fentanyl is just in everything these days, I think you have to just assume it's fentanyl-based and go ahead and, deliver a second dose as soon as you can. There are 2 to 4 minutes at the most. Put them in this rescue position so if they vomit, they won't aspirate, and they can also take in air through their nose and mouth as soon as possible. This naloxone in any form is only going to last 30 to 90 minutes, and what that means then is they could actually overdose again, depending on how much opioid is left in their system once they're revived. So you want them to go to the ER. Ideally, that's going to happen. Sometimes people, and of course, if they're adults, they won't want to go. And if they don't want to go, you need to make sure somebody stays with them for several hours. One of 2 things can happen. They can either overdose again because the opioid will come back in and stop their breathing, or otherwise they'll just go out and want to use opioids again. That's not going to be happening probably with our kids, but it could for an adult who is used to bringing opioids into their system all the time, and they have a dependency in their body to the opioid, and they're going to be in withdrawals, and they're going to feel horrible. So they know if they go get an opioid, it'll go away. All those horrible feelings will go away, but they're more susceptible to an overdose again because the opioid has been pretty much stripped from their body. So they really do need to go to the ER, and hopefully you can get them to go. Naloxone, as I mentioned, is only going to work on an opioid overdose, but again, it can show up in anything these days. Also know that it's not going to hurt them. If you make the wrong call, you think they're in overdose mode, and it turns out they're not, you're not going to kill them. It's not going to hurt them. I could literally spray naloxone up into my nose right now. It's not going to do a thing. So when in doubt, we want you to use it. We think everybody should have it these days, especially parents of preteens and teens and college students. We think college students should all have it. So we are actually working at UC Berkeley, UCLA, and some other universities and colleges to get Narcan available. So anyway, how do you get it? NCA PDA, you can get it tonight. We live locally, our organization's founded right here, so if anybody ever needs it for you or somebody else you know, contact us, I can get it to you. Otherwise, Naloxone for All is another website you can go to get it for free, and they'll just email it or mail it to you. So these, I want you all to know, because we need to understand what substance use disorder looks like. These are risk factors, and we're not going to go into detail on these, we don't have time. Family history of substance use disorder. If you've got somebody in your family, it doesn't matter what the substance is, who has struggled with substances, it can be tobacco, whatever, then our children have a 10 to 40% higher chance of developing one if they start using substances, especially when they start using earlier. Also, the mental health conditions that are plaguing so many of our youth now are really key. We need to really understand what's going on with them mentally and help support them in those things, because a lot of these other things, they move over to substances to help just get to a state of equilibrium. They don't want to feel like they feel. And so they self-medicate with different substances unless they learn how to cope with anxiety and depression in a healthy way. These are signs of either mental health or substance use. So again, we don't have time to go into a lot of detail, But there are behavioral signs where they're just acting differently. It's not just teenage behavior, but things are changing. They're hanging out with different people or whatever, not wanting to live life like they've used to do. And then physically, you can see those signs, and so those are going to be more obvious. So the key is really tune into those. Continue to educate yourselves. This is a good start, but there is so much more to learn. This is one part of my presentation. I can go into a ninth grade health class and take up a whole 90 minutes on this stuff, right? We want you to lock up your medications. That is so important. And then in terms of disposing them, you know, you'd be surprised. Go home, look at your medicine cabinets or wherever you keep your medications. I bet you find medications that are expired, either over the counter or, you know, prescribed medications. You don't need them there anymore. They're not useful. Get rid of them. You can take them to CVS, our police stations. All of our police stations have them. Just walk in, dump your meds. You don't have to, no questions asked, right? Even Kaiser has a drop-off box, and Safeways do now too at their pharmacy counters. These are really important tips. Monitor social media usage. You know what the #1 place that kids will find these medications and the fake fentanyls, it is Snapchat. That's where a lot of our kids are hanging out, and that is the #1 connection to drug dealers. So you need to monitor what they're doing on Snapchat. It's hard because messages go away. That's why people use it, right? Credit cards, if your kids have credit cards, you need to be looking to see where that money's going, and also these payment programs like Venmo. Drug dealers don't have a problem taking any of those forms of payment. And again, monitor their mental health. There's something called mental health first aid. I've actually gone through the training a couple of times. One's just regular, and then another one is for people who work with youth. I found it really helpful, and you just Google it. You'll find really good providers of that service, even online training. I think it's really important because it helps us identify where there are mental health issues coming along at the earliest stages, and then as they develop into deeper problems. It's much better to catch problems early, especially with our kids. And so do that. And of course, it's already been said, but you need to educate them about substance use. Believe it or not, they actually do listen, and there's a whole series that SAMHSA has put out of Talk, They Listen, and they've got some great resources, and some of them are back there on our resource table. Intervene early, and we have great resources. We've got great counselors, we have great teachers. Please don't think that, you know, you're making, you know, the stigma thing, don't let that get in the way of asking for help. Bottom line, there are great resources in our valley here. You're going to hear from Discovery Counseling Center in a little bit, and they're a really primary resource for us, but we've got other ones too, so just seek them out. These are crisis centers, mental health emergencies now, brand new hotline available 24/7. We've got the Contra Costa Crisis Center, so Candace, you mentioned that, and those services. And then SAMHSA actually has a 24/7 hotline as well. These resources available, but on the table back there, these are all listed plus more, so just grab one of those resource pages, and this is how you connect with us. We're up on all the social media, have a great website, and then that is true also of the Meds Coalition, so we work hand in hand all the time, and most of the resources up on our website are also on theirs. So thank you very much. Again, thank you, Judy, and everybody for being here.
Isn't she courageous and amazing? Let's give her another round, April Rivero. Thank you. Thanks for all you're doing. So I'm just going to kind of go through a lightning round of what's coming next for everybody. First, we're going to hear from Kathy Rooney, who's with our school district, a little bit about what's going on campuses. Then Sumita Bandari from Discovery Counseling is going to come up and talk to us a little bit about their resources, which we're all very proud of in our valley. And then we're going to go to our police chief, who's back here, Alan Shields, and then our fire chief. I'm not even going to do any more introductions because y'all are great speakers, and I know everybody's looking forward to hearing from you. So let's start. Kathy, please.
Hello, everybody. All right, so as Rachel said, we started this endeavor in the fall, and the Board of Education approved us to participate in the distribution project in October. So in early spring, January and February, we were able to get Narcan at all sites, and that includes elementary, middle, high, and our alternate locations, Del Amigo and Venture, Education Center, and Service Center. So at that time, each site had a kit. This is kind of kept in the nurse's office or the front office, and it has similar what April's have. is a set of 2 Narcan gloves, 3 face shields for CPR, and then we include how to, kind of a quick reference, and then on the back of this is a quick reference, signs and symptoms. And then depending on the location, for ease of access, let's say at a school site, the entire community at the school was emailed and told where the kid is kept. So even though that staff member may not have been trained to participate in the Narcan administration, everyone knows where it's at. They can go grab it, and then these are the numbers that they can call for that person to administer Narcan. We went through the training with April. The credentialed school nurses went through her training so that we were able to train our school staff. We've trained 110 staff members so far across the district. And we thought that one of the the decrease in access was that we keep this in the school offices, right, or in the office. And after school extracurricular activities, sports, we wanted to increase access to that. So we went back to the distribution project, asked for some more Narcan, which they gladly gave us, and we included all district-owned, 63 of the district-owned AED units, like that one there, also have a kit of the same kit in there. So after hours, that's accessible to everybody. The project was very well received. We had many, many volunteers that we actually had to limit a little bit. We want to train them in CPR, so we wanted to have a certain amount at each site. So we were able to train them in full BLS CPR, which we will be starting in the fall. So it's been a great project, great partnership with April. We appreciate your guidance and support and the community. So thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sumitha Bhandari. I'm the Executive Director at Discovery Counseling Center, and I'm here to just speak a little bit more to the issue of the intersection of mental health with the fentanyl crisis.
Your slide is next.
Yep, I'll bring it up. Thanks, Judy. So, there are a variety of reasons that teens may use prescription drugs, and I think April spoke to some of these. But obviously, it's not just to get high, and there are a variety of circumstances in which you might find that your teen is struggling with prescription drug abuse. At this age, a lot of teenagers have a strong desire to fit in with their friends. They might be looking to something that one of their friends is trying to do, and they're trying to experiment with a very dangerous lifestyle. As April also mentioned, it's possible that this could be a prescription that was given to them by a doctor, and all of a sudden it's sliding down into an out-of-control situation. But I think the largest thing that we come in with is really the emotional side, that a lot of teens will start to self-medicate to deal with issues of anxiety or depression and really to just feel better. And so what we try and do and what we come in with is really early intervention. And so rather than speaking to, I'm an executive director, I'm not a clinician, so I'd like to speak to really some of the resources and the programs that the school district has been supporting with a partnership with Discovery Counseling Center that really can be very useful to parents. So, but before I move there, I just want to generally encourage all of us at a time that I think has become more difficult post-pandemic, is to maintain that connection with our kids and to listen to them without judgment. I think, a lot of the conversations, it's difficult for us to keep our opinions out, but I think it's so important for us to keep those communication lines open with our children so that we can kind of just ask them with curiosity and without judgment. Have they heard about use of fentanyl among their friends? What do they think about it? Do they think that it's easily accessible? Just an open conversation without judgment will allow them to perhaps approach you when something does happen, even if it hasn't happened so far. An opportunity or a situation comes along where they might want your advice. And so the more that we can listen to our kids without that judgment attached, I think it makes it easier for them to approach us in the future. So just making a conversation out of that relay of facts that you do want to share with your kids, I think is really important. And I'm just going to put this slide, that's actually not mine. There we go. Okay. So I came across this in sort of doing research for what I'd speak to tonight, and I thought it was a very salient quote that I wanted to share with you. And for those of you that might not be able to read it on the screen, I'll just go ahead and read it out loud. We know that the spike in all forms of substance abuse among adolescents is connected to a broader mental health crisis so serious that the U.S. Surgeon General has identified it as a public health emergency. The COVID-19 global pandemic has exacerbated the mental health challenges faced by our students and their families. Our schools cannot turn away from this crisis. There's never been a more important moment to increase easily accessible school-based mental health services, substance abuse intervention, and supportive resources for families in crisis. This is a piece of literature that came out in October of 2022. And really, I think speaks to a lot of what we hear in the community from parents, that connection with their kids is something that we're all craving and has become more challenging in the last few years. So, you know, the school district has been thinking about this for a while, and I think some of the resources that are already in place are really useful to share with you tonight, which, you know, also are at no cost for families. So a couple of these programs, the first one really deals more with substance abuse. You know, should there be a situation where it's a first-time offense, it's a two-step model where if your child is, you know, caught on campus either in possession, selling, or using an illegal substance, there is a program that's offered to them that focuses more on restorative principles, something that really involves the family in trying to first assess what the level of abuse is, and then secondly have a meeting with the family. So they meet with a licensed therapist. They discuss what the level of use is in that first meeting, and in the second meeting, the family comes in, and there's a discussion about, you know, what are the proactive steps that we can do? What are the other resources that might be appropriate in that situation? Again, and the idea here is to move away from a punitive state to reduce suspension by a day by participation in this program, and we've heard wonderful things about the school campuses that have taken advantage of this opportunity. Second thing I want to mention is the School Counseling and Intervention Program, which is the SKIP program. That has been in our schools for over 33 years now. And what that is a counselor in training, but a counselor that's on school campuses 2 days a week. Every single school campus has access to that. So really, the idea is to watch our kids, to notice signs that I think April had also mentioned, notice a change in their social circles and their sleep patterns, things like that. If they're struggling with anxiety or depression, the idea is to get early intervention and early treatment going so we can help them with the mental health challenges that might be spurring other substance abuse intersections. So with that, I will conclude my remarks. I've left some brochures and cards in the back speaking to SKIP and our Discovery Counseling Center in general. If you have any questions, feel free. I'd be happy to share more insights or resources with you. And thank you all for being here tonight.
Hi, I'm Alan Shields, Chief of Police for the town of Danville. And first off to everyone here, thank you for coming. This is the first step in showing a little bit of humility of what we don't know and taking steps towards protecting our kids. Judy, thanks for putting this on. I appreciate it. April, real big thanks to you. Every time I hear your story, I actually get a little choked up inside, and it's, I think it is the height of courage to come out and share your story. I don't know that I would have the character and the courage to do that, so thank you. Those are the two things I want you to take away, humility and courage, right? We've talked about, you know, the being prepared, right? And being resilient doesn't mean closing your eyes. And a lot of times in public safety, when we see things are going to go bad, but when things go really bad, a lot of times it's because there was no preparation done in advance. And I want to share a little personal story about how I had to overcome my own humility. And that was, my son broke his arm 1.5 years ago. Go to the doctor wants us to leave with a little bit of opiates, you know, some pills, so that when the pain comes on, you want to stay ahead of it. Good doctor, great doctor, no issue with that. But I was like, hey, we don't do that in our house. We don't do opiates. Then the nurse comes, says, hey, we're also going to give you one for Narcan, just like Supervisor Anderson said. And I actually was offended. I was like, hey, I said we don't do that in my house. Like, that's not my house. And then the nurse kind of gave me that, you know how, like, especially like a mom drops her chin a little bit, looks at you and says, really? And she broke down my barrier of saying, hey, it's not a matter of what you intend to do, it's a matter of what may come. We don't intend to have the hillside catch fire. But if it does, we want to be prepared. We want to clean the brush, right? We don't intend to be victims of theft or violence, but we lock our doors anyway, right? So I have to agree with everyone that I've heard so far. Frankly, if you're a parent and you don't have Narcan, I think you're doing yourself a disservice from the preparation side. If you watch other kids at your homes, you should have it. So that's the humility part. The courage is to do something. A lot of times we have status, and we see this all over. And we respond into homes of people with status. And they're so concerned about status that they don't grab on to help. And your son or daughter, your husband or wife, someone in your home, they may have a problem. And you may even issue Narcan. But if you don't do what April said and take that next step of calling, she said, hopefully you can get them to go to 911. No. You need to get Paige's folks there because they need to get there right now. Because that Narcan will wear off, they'll continue to go through that overdose. You have to get them there, right? We respond to this. There is no law enforcement issue with that. We're not going to come with handcuffs. We're going to come with hugs. We don't do handcuffs when it comes to overdose. So know that. The other thing is make sure we're casting that vision out there, right? We always, right now we've got a set of people here. We've got a set of people that are viewing this later online. And we're all learning from this. But go and tell 5 people, right? Cast that message out. Now, just show of hands for parents. Who here has had their kids over at sleepovers? Right? Most, right? Yeah. Have you ever asked that parent if they have Narcan at their house? Hey, do you have Narcan? Do you know what? I'll be honest. I sometimes I think I know the parents really well that I'm sending my kids to. And all of you have probably had the same experience. And then you realize, well, you know what? Maybe I don't, because maybe their values don't quite align with our family's values. So have the humility to be prepared. Being resilient isn't closing our eyes. It's opening them, being prepared. Have the courage when something happens to do something and cast that message out, because we respond all the time to these homes, good, bad, or indifferent. And that's what I love about April's story, is that is all of our sons, right? I have 3 boys. That could easily be one of my sons, easily. So have that courage and cast that message out. Thank you.
You say you give hugs? Nobody heard that, right?
It's not to the fire chief.
Yeah, I never keep waiting for my hug, Alan. It's not happening. Wow, how do you start? How do you end? I'm kind of the last one, I guess. Close to the last one. But one of the things that that I've noticed, we're looking at statistics, and it's funny you brought up. We really need to capture stats, right? I'm kind of a stat freak. I like to know what's happening. And one of the things I challenge everybody here, and I think everybody had such great insight and personal stories, what they've experienced, but then also kind of what's happening. And I don't know if anybody here is feeling it, but things don't feel right the last couple of years. And so, we've been working on a mental health pilot program. We've been really working hard because in the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District, we actually transport. So we're seeing a lot of these firsthand, and then we take them from the call all the way to the hospital. And we're also seeing the mental health aspect that we've heard tonight, which is always, somewhat of a nexus, right? You don't know how much mental health really does affect, but I think with the stats, we can dig into it and start to see how many people self-medicate, how many people look to outward ways to cope, right? So all these things are important. And so one of the things we've been doing, and so it's kind of natural for us, is we looked at our numbers. And one of the numbers that was kind of fascinating was that we've seen this dramatic increase in the last 2 years of mental health holds. It's commonly referred to as a 5150. And so I thought, when we were talking about what to talk about, that hold in and of itself, that what we saw was a 500% increase since pre-COVID. What we also saw was we saw about 160 mental health holds in the last year for our youth in our valley. So we cover from the border of Dublin to the border of Walnut Creek, just about. Trying. But what we see with 163 juvenile mental health holds is a real issue, because in the past it was around 30, 35, 40 was a big year for us. So I was looking at those numbers, and I don't want to get political because I really don't like anybody on either side of the aisle, so that's just me. But it is pretty fascinating when you look at, in the last 2 years, this is what we're seeing. So what's happening to our kids, and what message are we sending them by being so divisive? And everything's their fault, not their fault. You're a victim, you're not a victim. So we're really looking at it from our perspective as what's going on with our kids. We're trying to dig into it. And I'll tell you another stat that was very interesting. With our juveniles, more than 2 times, 2 to 1, it's females going on a hold. Fascinating, right? We could even pinpoint it to like a day and time, like in the afternoon, Thursday afternoon, we can know what's happening. So I bring that up because, you know, if you have a daughter, maybe you should be more aware. You should always be aware no matter what, but it is interesting to say, wow, it's 2 to 1, 2.5 to 1. So those stats I think are important for you to hear from us. The last thing I'll say is when it comes to overdoses, what we're seeing is we're seeing the opposite, a 2 to 1, male to female. So males are overdosing twice as often, right? 2 times. So all these things, and we talk about it, these things matter because if we're going to solve the problem, we can do, I think, you know, Chief Shields did a great job of speaking about what we need to do. You need to be aware, you need to know, but you also need to look at stats. And you need to be looking at them so you can pinpoint what's happening and understand it more, because I think the more you understand it, the more it'll make sense to you. Now, here's the key. How do I do this? This one right here? So you can't see this. Is it that? What do I do? Turn it off? What is going on here? Come on, I'm only a firefighter. I can't really do stuff. So anyway, what you can see here, and I'll read it. You look at these responses, right? You can see the mental health responses there, the difference for 2022, 2023, and we are just going at a pace that we've never seen before. You can see under the age of 18, 163 calls since about approximately a year ago. And here's the key, and you can get caught up in all this nonsense, but to me, this is what it means for me. When we go to a call to a mental health call, we're spending 105 minutes on that call. We spend about half that time on a heart attack, somebody that's not breathing. So it's an issue for us as well, right? The other thing you need to know, and you can see here, and this one's the one that's kind of the most disturbing for me, and it's the reason for our mental health program, pilot program that the district's doing, is 90% of these folks are out within 24 hours. So there's something we're missing here, right? There's something in there in the data that we're not quite able to resolve. And I don't bring it up because I don't want to tell you, I don't have the answer. I don't right now have the answer. I have a good idea. I have some theories and we're working on them. But I will tell you, they're all disturbing numbers, right? And so from where we sit, we go, okay, how does this translate to the overdose opioid epidemic that we're seeing? Well, about, 3 to 5 times a month we're administering it. If you're doing it in the field, we're not sure comparatively, right? We have to look at that data as well. So just because my stats say we gave Narcan or we didn't, it could have been given. So those aren't necessarily always accurate. But how do we take that data where we actually use Narcan and we can dig into those numbers, and then we can look at how many mental health calls have we gone on? Because we have to start marrying that. We can't just theorize about what this means. We have to start putting them together. So I guess my wrap up is this: is you've heard from great people, smart people. Everybody sees the issues that we're facing. You have to be aware of it. And your fire district and your ambulance company, quite frankly, because we're both, we're really trying to dig into the numbers so that we can come back with, I think, an educated look at what we have so we can solve the problem. because everybody's got tape. And don't get me wrong, these are invaluable, right? We're going to use these. It's important. But we got to get to the root cause of what's causing this. Otherwise, we're just going to keep coming to these trainings and talking about it without knowing what's really happening. So that's the challenge that I've given my staff. I think they're doing a great job. I think in about a year from now, we're going to have a good idea of what we think the problems are. You may not like them, quite frankly, but we'll tell you what we think they are, and then we'll go from there. But I'm not here to make people happy, quite frankly. I'm here to solve problems. So thank you for your time, and hopefully that will help.
So I think before we go to our student panel, how many people feel like your community leaders are committed? All of you, I hope. Amazing show of support here. I just want to thank all of you for being with us and sharing what you have. This is only our first program. We'll be doing another one in the fall, which is going to be on anxiety awareness. And so we're excited about that as well. We've got some students here that are going to do a little student panel for us. Could you all come up? Kids that are on the panel. We want to thank you for taking your time. I'm just going to go in the opposite direction. We'll start with the girls over here. How's that? So without indicating your high school, please share what you've seen or heard about drug usage at your school. You want to start us off?
At my school, although drug usage itself isn't such a prevalent issue, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are aware who have friends or family members who have used and partaken in using opioids. So that is definitely something to note on my end.
So for me, similar to Salika, at my school there isn't as much of like outright like drug usage as there might be at other schools, but I know that there are some people who do like use drugs and think it's cool or just think it's like something to just do, and they don't really understand the effects of what they're doing. So I know it is an issue among some of the people at my school, but it's not exactly talked about or as prevalent of an issue as I would say at some other schools.
I would say at my school, it's a very big issue. When I've talked to students and with firsthand experience, when you go into a school bathroom and you see on the floor certain recreational drugs or vapes or other similar products, and then even deeper than that with some of these opioids and fentanyl, when you hear about at your school or at other schools in the district, students having overdosed and it's personal when you have friends who know them or if you're even friends with them.
I would say that definitely within my school community and also within our area, drug use is a very prominent issue. I would, warn everyone here, it's definitely more common than you expect. Even the people you may know, you wouldn't expect it because people are typically pretty secretive. It's not something you want to put out there, but I would say it's definitely a bigger issue than all of us are expecting to see. And I'd like to thank all of our community leaders who are so dedicated to helping us resolve this issue, because I know that a lot of it not only starts with treatment, but also with prevention.
Okay, so at my school it's also a prevalent issue. I have friends I know that have done drugs before and still currently do. So there's people around me that I know that do drugs, and from what I've seen, they're pretty comfortable with sharing their experience with it. So I've heard about a lot of my friends who've gone through it, and also in bathrooms and stuff like that. You go in and you can like smell some of the drugs that, like edibles or vapes and stuff like that. So it's definitely prevalent at my school.
All right, thank you. So what are the factors that you think contribute most to substance abuse among teens? Is it peer pressure, academics, pressure from parents, mental health, or just plain curiosity? Go ahead.
I think peer pressure is definitely the biggest thing that I've seen personally. I've seen people get into drugs because their friends do it, or like someone pressures them into doing it, or I know some people who do it for fun and some people who don't want to do it, but because their friends do it, they feel like they have to do it to like fit in and stuff like that.
I completely agree. Being offered drugs isn't something that's uncommon. It does happen. I think most students have been well educated to the point where they're willing, they understand that they should be saying no. But I definitely think that peer pressure is a factor. I also think that one of the other factors is pressure. Academic pressure especially. especially with students who feel like they aren't competitive academically or aren't able to compete with the students around them. It almost leads to a sense of not belonging, and a lot of students look for an out for that. And I think that that's where a lot of these drug issues come into play.
I would definitely agree on peer pressure, especially for the recreational drugs, whether it be students at schools or outside when they're having sleepovers, as was discussed, or at parties. It's all too common to see. I mean, even friends of mine that I've grown up with, and we went through this education that warns you of how horrible some of these drugs are. Now doing some of these drugs themselves. But when it comes to some of the more extreme drugs, the opioids that we're talking about, I think that's where mental health is a bigger factor, and where students do feel a lot of pressure, and sometimes they see this as an out when it's not necessarily the right solution.
Yeah, I agree with all of those who spoke before me. I think a really big factor is also like he said, academic pressure. I know a lot of the schools in this area are really competitive, where it feels like everybody else has a 4.7 GPA and they're doing all these things and taking all these hard classes. So it almost feels like you have to measure up to that. And then that combined with the fact that other people are telling you, and this is like directed like parents, just like parents, other students, and also just yourself. You kind of feel like if I don't get into a top 20 school or college, then it's just going to be like my life is over. So you have to push yourself to take all these hard classes and do this and do that. And at a certain point, you almost start to overwhelm yourself with how much you can take, with how much you can physically do and how much you think you can do. And at a certain point, it becomes too much that you just take on. And I know a lot of people might turn to drugs like marijuana or other things like that as an outlet, just to either keep themselves awake to study even more, or just say, okay, I'll just do this a little bit and it'll make me less stressed, it'll take the edge off, and then I'll go back to studying, or I'll go back to doing this. And then at a certain point, it just becomes like a repetitive cycle that you can't really get out of.
Yeah, I have to definitely agree with everyone has said right now. A lot of this community, or at least a lot of the individuals I know personally, the students here, they focus heavily on academics and academic success, if you will. So compared to all these competitive applicants in their grade pool and anyone else, students, their friends, there's always like a discussion of like, oh, how are you doing academically? What are you doing outside of school? And that, like, these internal and external factors most likely push students towards their breaking point, and they start to look for an outlet, and that's drugs and many recreational drugs. So yeah.
So based on that, what do you think is the most abused substance at your school? If you had to guess.
I would say, oh, do you want to go ahead?
No, you can go.
Okay, thank you. I would say definitely two of the most prominent ones I would say are vaping and marijuana. I think that that's just the easiest to get access to because they're legalized for adults. So in a lot of cases, people are getting them from siblings or maybe stealing them from their parents, but they're definitely in excess throughout the community. So it's easy to get access to. So that's why I would say we're seeing less use of fentanyl-related drugs in high school because again they're harder to find. Still, that being said, any drug use is an issue, especially for minors.
I would like to agree, and I think vaping, especially from what I've seen, is very accessible. I'm in the bathroom sometime, and there's people offering vapes to each other, so it's really easy to get access to, and because so many people do it, you feel like you have to, or like you feel the pressure to do it as well.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with both of those, and I know this goes even beyond the high school level. I have a younger sister who's in middle school, and she's seen in her school bathrooms kids offering vapes or kids taking edibles, and so this is an issue which, as prominent as it is at the high school level, it's even trickling down further.
I have to agree as well. I think marijuana and edibles are also very commonly abused drugs. I also have to add on to that, I think another potentially misused drug is cough medicine. So I'm pretty sure there's many like active ingredients in cough medicine. Some of them are psychoactive and some many students may just overdose on cough medicine to get high. And as April mentioned before, they may mix them with other recreational drugs to create lean or any other kind of concoction. So that's something to know as well.
And then at my school it's pretty much the same. People are using marijuana and vapes. And then this is going a little bit beyond the drugs, but I also know that there are like a good amount of people at my school who have drinking alcohol as like some kind of way to just get off the stress. And I know that goes back to it just being easy to access, because I know a lot of people's parents have alcohol in easy ways to access, like you just open a cabinet and it's there and you just drink it. So I guess that's also like another substance that's commonly abused among people at my school.
All right, so how well informed do you think teens are at your school about fentanyl at this stage? I know it's kind of something over the last couple months, it's kind of risen in the news, but how aware are teens in your schools?
I would say within the San Ramon Valley Unified School District, I'd say students generally have a very strong understanding of the risks of fentanyl. I think pretty much all students are well aware of it, especially if they're taking drugs or in that community. They're familiar with the risks. I think a lot of the time the main problem is the assumption that, you know, oh, it couldn't happen to me, or I trust getting pills from this person, or, you know, it definitely isn't as prevalent as you would think. And that oftentimes leads to the misconceptions where students maybe are afraid to get test strips or are so confident that their drugs are safe that they're willing to take a risk.
Yeah, I would like to agree. I think most people at my school are pretty well educated on drugs and fentanyl. So I actually met Ms. Rivera because she came and presented in my 9th grade health class about fentanyl and drugs. So I know that at least the people in my health teachers' classes and periods are very well informed about it. But I think even if they're informed, they don't necessarily take it as seriously. And so I think that's a big problem as well.
Yeah, I would agree with both of them. I mean, I can remember as early as middle school and elementary school having DARE programs or Red Ribbon Week. Students know about these drugs. Students know the risks of them, but it goes back to that, oh, it could never be me mentality. I have a friend who I was speaking to who she was friends with one of the students who overdosed, and she said, I mean, I knew he did drugs, but I never thought that would happen to him. I thought he said he got him from a trusted source. And it really goes to show that students know about it, but that isn't deterring them from doing it.
Yeah, at my school, I think similar to what was said before, people are pretty much well educated. Mrs. Rivera has come and spoken at our school twice in the last 2 years, I know, so most people are fairly well educated, but I know a lot of people just think it's not exactly like, they know it's an issue, but they don't feel like it's an issue that could happen to them, like you were saying before. And they know it's to be taken seriously, but they don't think it could happen on such a local level or could happen to them. They think it's like a 1 in 100 kind of instance, and they think, oh, I'm not going to be that like one person. So.
Yeah, I have to agree with everyone else on the panel. Definitely at our school, although drugs aren't commonly used, everyone knows about the issue. Although when they do hear about the issue, they don't put too much attention on it. They just think it's just another regular health issue that the public is facing. I'm pretty sure a lot of students in our school, like, they understand the intensity of it, as Rhea mentioned before, but they don't really understand the reality and the consequences at the local level drugs have on kids.
So that's actually why we're here tonight, right? So people can have a better understanding. So, you know, this is really geared towards parents and caregivers. What can parents do to better educate their kids or better support their kids so they make good decisions and maybe stay away from alcohol and drugs or vaping? Let's start with you.
Yeah, of course. So I definitely think, although like this doesn't apply for a majority of parents, I'm pretty sure some parents put like a consistent pressure on their kids to achieve academic success, and like you need to go to a top 20 college. So maybe to take down that notch in pressure, it's like, hey, encouraging your kid, even if they fail at something or they fail at a test, you're like, it's okay, you can always do better, you can improve from that standpoint. Also, probably definitely more like mental health resources at high schools for students to talk to like a counselor or a teacher, and just making it a more open environment. And like, it's okay, you're not the only one here. It's something we all go through, peer pressure. So, yeah.
And then I think adding on to what sounded like I said, another thing that parents could do is also just be there to listen, because I know a lot of kids sometimes feel like their parents won't understand what they're going through, or that they won't really, or that they'll just dismiss their feeling and say, oh, you get a good night to sleep, eat some food, have a proper meal, and you'll feel better in the morning. But a lot of the times, those feelings, when you're feeling depressed or when you're feeling super anxious about something, those things don't go away and they later manifest into more serious problems. So overall, just being there and having, just understanding, even if you don't completely understand what's going on with your child or like how they're feeling, just being there, nodding, saying, okay, let's see what we can do, figure it out together, that can help a lot.
Yeah, I would say definitely pay attention to your kids. And I know as a teenager, none of us want like to have these awkward conversations. It can be very difficult. It's very uncomfortable. Or, you know, when as a teenager somebody gets in trouble and that affects them socially, whether they lose their phone or some other consequence, you know, teens feel even more uncomfortable and more pushed away from having open conversations with their parents. And so for the parents out there, I would say stay aware and be willing to have those conversations in an environment that's going to make your teenager comfortable, because even if it means you can't say the exact words that you want to say to them, make sure that those conversations are had so that they know they can come to you if they have issues. And just be aware, keep track of them, even if they don't want you to, keep track. And when you see signs, such as a lot of the ones that were mentioned earlier today, you know, take action based on those. Don't be worried about having an awkward conversation, or don't be worried about restricting your kids' access to certain things, whether it be friends who may have a higher risk of doing some of these actions. It's not worth a child's life to, even if they just disagree with you, or if you have an argument, or if you tell them, you know, you can't go to this party or hang out with this person. It's not worth their life to not have that uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, I think it's also very important to note that, you know, since all of you are already here or watching online, you are already taking a step in the right direction. You know, it really proves that you do care about the health of your kids. So the only advice I would give is just make sure that you're an outlet for them. You know, you can take a friendly approach. It doesn't have to be a formal conversation. Just make sure you know what's going on in your kids' lives. I think that there's, you know, something very mental health related about having a kid who's willing to take, even if it's just a 1 or 2% risk with their own lives. I think that's very indicative of their own health. So I think just, you know, keeping an eye out for that and making sure that they're doing all right in their personal lives, because that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I would like to agree with everyone on the panel. And I've also, I don't know if you guys have heard the phrase, but it's like strict parents can raise sneaky kids. It's important to be honest with your kids and just let them know that you can be trusted. Have that conversation with them, because when it comes down to a dangerous situation, your kids aren't going to want to tell their parents unless they know that their parents, like, they're comfortable with their parents and they know that they can talk with them without having to worry about getting in trouble or like facing the consequences. So I think just letting your child know that you can trust, that they can trust you, is the most important part.
Awesome. Well, I remember when it used to only be 4.0. You couldn't go up anymore. It was just 4. That was it. Okay? And I might have been a sneaky kid. I had a pretty strict dad. So thanks for that. I appreciate that. Aren't they fantastic? They took time out of their schedule and away from their studies to come help us tonight. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your time. We've got a couple minutes left if anybody has any questions for our elected officials or for April. Otherwise, love to have people stick around. I see in the back Jay Kerr from the Fire District. Thank you, sir, from the board for being here.
Thank you for doing it.
Go ahead.
Parents also have to worry about non-illegal drugs. I have a friend whose son just died from overdosing on Imodium. Who would have thought? But he was abusing it and then tried to come off of it and had what do they call it? When you're coming off a drug, withdrawal, and wound up dying from it. So it's not just what they're buying from dealers, it's what they're buying at CVS. And, you know, I look at my kids' rooms, they go to school, and I go in their rooms, and I just see, like, why would you have this in your room? If you need Advil, you get it from me, you don't carry it in your room. So just things like that, like they don't need to have their own over-the-counter medicine in their rooms or in their bathrooms.
That's a
It could be
great point.
as
Thank you.
simple as Imodium. Who would have known? I mean, my girlfriend's like, I didn't know. Who would have thought Imodium? Like, and then when we Googled it, she's like, oh yeah, it could cause heart failure, and that's what he died of.
And if I could add on to that, I'm a student athlete myself, and every soccer practice, you know, I'll see teammates of mine pulling out of their bag some sorts of medication, whether it just be, you know, if they have a sprained ankle or something sore, everybody carries it with them. Or my friends, if they have a headache, they pull it out of their backpack at school. So it really goes to show, I mean, kids are using certain even over-the-counter medications or stuff they can just go into CVS and buy. And so we have to be aware, because that can lead to a path that's much more dangerous.
Yeah. I would also like to add on, if you take like a lot of painkillers, you know how you can get like a dependence to them, and so like the effects, like they're not as effective as they were. So like I have a friend who recently injured, she bruised her bone from a volleyball tournament, and she was telling me that she was like taking 8 ibuprofen pills a day, and it wasn't helping her as much because she had gotten like a reliance to the ibuprofen since she takes it so often for volleyball. So I think that's also a really important factor to discuss.
Absolutely. Any other questions? No, we've answered all your questions. Amazing. There is a resource table over here that has wonderful things for parents. Please learn about our Youth Mental Health Initiative, because we're going to be continuing to do this. I want to thank Chief Meyer for being with us, Chief Shields for being with us, all of our elected officials, and any of you who are part of the program. Let's take a picture with these kids, if that's all right. Oh. And the most important part, I nearly forgot, which April reminded me, there are Narcan kits over here, and April and her team will work with you on distributing those. So thank you so much for coming. Really, really appreciate the turnout tonight. Thank you.